Okay, we're live. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. I'm so excited about this. This is the second in our exciting series, Transformational Life series. So far, those of you who have been watching and listening, you will see we've had some incredible speakers. There are so many more to come. Thank you for being with us. And without further ado, I am very honored and very excited to introduce all of you to our second speaker now. Kundan Chhabra, thank you for being with us. I am so excited about this and everything we're going to talk about and share. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, I'm so excited too. So my name is Kundan Chhabra, and I help empower people through the creation of and the implementation of mental models, awareness practices, and awakening tools to help them embody a love that is kind, playful, and fierce, and really also to help them co-create that more beautiful, free world that they saw in their altered states, such as their mystical experiences, psychedelic states, and their flow states, as well as even their awakening experiences. So that's to put it succinctly, that's what I do, although there's so much more in that.
As ever. Thank you so much. That is so great. And everyone, we're going to talk more about what Kundan does towards the end of this talk. But as you'll have seen and heard so far, this is once again the Transformational Life series. We are sharing with you the life stories, the journeys so far of some of the incredible people in our world, women and men. And so today we are going to be again speaking with you about Kundan and your journey. Now, the conversation so far, for those of you again who have been watching and listening, you will have noticed that for most of them, we're starting, at the beginning, early years. Well, something very exciting has been happening in Kundan's world, and he and I were actually speaking about this just before we started recording. So we're switching up the format a little bit because it feels very relevant and very exciting to share with everyone some of what's been going on for you now and recently. Would you like to let everyone know, Kundan, what's been going on?
Oh yeah, you mean like the recent events and in this whole industry that some people know and some people have not known about it yet. But there's been a lot of major developments and a lot of kind of like the veils falling down and people seeing more of the truth behind the scenes about what's going on in this whole industry that we're both a part of, personal development, spiritual healing, yoga, meditation, etc., self-help. And it really, a lot of the big names are being called out, such as Tony Robbins and Marianne Williamson, Neston Kibb, and Gabby Bernstein, and all these people that we've all looked up to in the past. So it really started with, it's almost like many of developments happening independently as well in the last 3 or 4 weeks. But as far as what I was involved in, it really started with the summit called Urban Priestess, which is either a tele summit or it might have been a video summit. And it was all full of white women, and there might have been 1 or 2 women of color. And then about at least, I would venture to say at least a quarter or 1/3 of these women had quite a significant percentage had Hindu and Indian names, even though they were white women. And there was at least 1 person who had these, not only did she have an Indian or Hindu name, which I don't think she even knows what that name means, because that particular character had 5 husbands, and in some Hindu circles it's actually used as an insult. So,
wow.
so I don't think she even knows that. So, uh, and then she had these Native American, dream catchers and headdresses and all of that. And so there was a whole lot of call outs by women of color regarding both the lack of diversity and inclusion and the cultural appropriation involved in that summit. And even the fact that they use the word urban, for example, which is, almost favors gentrification among Black people, like using Black people's term in order to make money off it. And there was that issue too. So, and then the use of the word priestess. So there were so many like questionable things. And then Marianne Williamson was part of that summit. And apparently this was the second summit she was a part of that lacked diversity and inclusion. She was also apparently a part of a panel that happened right in New Mexico, which is full of people of color. And yet the whole panel was full of white people, which didn't even make sense because it's the opposite of what the city is supposed to be about. So anyways, I posted a question on her wall and asked her, hey, why are you part of the summit? It was a simple question. And her very first comment I thought was so defensive and so full of these, what I call logical fallacies, like false equivalence, for example. She compared all of these women of color to the oppressor. Like she literally compared all of us, to the alt-right and said, you're the same as the alt-right. And the alt-right, as you know, is the KKK, the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists. So it is the worst analogy she could have done. So it became this very long, ongoing trend. It's still going on, this trend.
Oh, wow.
So, and then she started digging in her heels, like, more and more with even more of the comments, where she became more and more defensive and more attacking. But finally, I think after a few comments back and forth, she just went silent, and she still hasn't responded. The thread's still going on with all these people commenting. And meanwhile, on her page, she's continuing to post her stuff like it's business as usual, like nothing had happened. And then that whole thread inspired at least two amazing articles, one on the power of sacred race as transformational, which is part of my work too. So I almost feel like I found a sister when I read that article. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. We're partners in crime. And then it inspired a second article. So the first was by Alexis Morgan. The second is Tori, I think her last name is Patillo, because she had already called out Gabby Bernstein. But she's mentioned Marianne Williamson at the time, but she hadn't, she was still praising her. In fact, she was even part of the Sister Giant meetings that Marianne Williamson did. And that's the other thing too. A lot of the people in that thread that were calling her out were not just random internet peeps. We've been following her work for years, Like I went to the I Can Do It conference where she spoke, and then there was another woman there where she even gave her a platform in her early years and invited her. She was on the board of the organization that invited her to speak. So, and I think that was another big, you might call it a mistake she made. I think she might have thought we were just random peeps, but not random peeps.
Yeah.
We've been following her, and that's very presumptuous of her to do that too, right?
Yeah.
That because at one point she made a comment, "Oh, if you only knew my work, I'm not like that." But like, we do know your work. That's why we're calling you in, because it's heartbreaking that you're doing this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just for those who are watching and listening, if they aren't aware of things such as cultural appropriation and so forth, how would you describe that so that they understand where the issue is with all of this?
Yeah, so there's a difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation, right? And Ted Hargrave has written some great articles on this subject, where on one level, people tend to go into, morality and rules. And when we talk about it, it's not so much about morality and rules, but more about mutual goodwill between cultures and also honoring the lineage and the heritage of where something comes from. So it's not right when you disparage the culture from which something comes from while profiting off it and not recognizing where it comes from at all. That's part of cultural appropriation. And this is why a lot of people were, for example, calling out even Miley Cyrus, right? Because she was using a whole lot of Black music and a lot of stuff, but didn't actually recognize where it's coming from. Like she was appropriating like it's her thing. It's not her thing, So when you take something without acknowledging where it comes from, and then profit out, that's part of it. Another part of it is what I call dilution and distortion. So, for example, there's a lot of white teachers and translators of Taoism and the Tao Te Ching. And it wasn't until I started studying the many different translations of it and comparing it to the original Chinese characters that I realized how much diluted and even distorted it was. And it's really distorted towards what I call docility masquerading as peace, which is very common in the New Age industry too, of like emphasizing doing nothing, going with the flow. But when I started studying what the actual modern day Chinese teachers had to say about it as well as the original translations, the original characters, I found to my surprise that there is a book on Taoism by a Chinese man called Do Nothing and Do Everything. I was like, whoa, no one ever told me that part about doing everything, because I was only learning from the white teachers, right, from the middleman instead of the original. So, and the white teachers themselves are using the translations of the white middlemen, like Stephen Mitchell, for example. So it's like way down the dilution. So the original lineage is no longer recognized. So that's a huge part of it too, that the whole dilution and distortion.
And it's part of the issue as well. And do let me know if I've got this accurately. Is part of the issue also that, and part of where the controversy is coming up with things such as, the summit you mentioned and so on, is part of the issue that while obviously it's fine for people of all colors, all races, all genders, ethnicities, etc., to want to learn about these things and want to incorporate whether it's a religion or let's say, I don't know, a new yoga practice or whatever it is, it's fine for each of us to incorporate those things into our lives. But is part of the issue when people don't fully understand where it's coming from.
And not recognizing
not
the
giving
people.
Credit because,
they're using the teachings, things from indigenous culture, right? That's what most of the summit teachers are teaching from, but there's not a single indigenous person in that summit. And that's where it's off. A lot of the teachings come from Eastern culture as well, like India and China, right, and Africa, but there's not a single Indian or Chinese teacher in that summit. So that's where it's very off. So you want to profit off these teachings, but you don't want to recognize the teachers.
Yes. Absolutely. So is some of the controversy as well related to that? That when people such as you and some of the other people you've mentioned, when you have pointed this out to those who have been involved in conferences and so on, that their responses have not been positive ones,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a whole lot of the responses are very much spiritual bypassing, gaslighting, logical fallacies,
Mm.
and calls for unity and accusing the other person of being divisive. And so all of these defense mechanisms come up.
So instead of acknowledging
Mm-hmm.
that those who are speaking up could have a valid point of view to consider,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's been more kind of responses
Yeah.
that push the others' opinions and through that their emotions
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you mentioned before we started recording, when we were briefly speaking about this, you mentioned that for you, this has been providing some very unexpected, I suppose, opportunities, but that you have realized you've been able to use your voice to help in a
Mm-hmm.
positive way that has also been unexpected for you. Would you like to share
Yeah.
a bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't do this to benefit me or to have
No,
these
of course not.
unexpected things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is another point because part of the spiritual, because I want to mention this briefly too, because this
Mm.
became a topic of concern yesterday, and even in a Facebook group I'm a part of, where this woman was like, "Well, I went to this conference because Spirit told me to, despite the lack of diversity, but then I ended up helping these two people that said, I was there to meet you or something like that." And I responded with that with, well, in response to my thread with Marianne Williamson, this incredible article came out. So some good came out of it, right? But that doesn't make it right. Still doesn't make it right. And
Mm.
that needs to be really emphasized because otherwise people are going to use that you know, as a form of spiritual bypassing in a sense where good can come out of anything, but it still doesn't make it right, you know.
Mm.
So yes, some good things did come out. I really like this incredible, powerful article about anger that was inspired by the thread. In fact, it's an open letter to Marianne Williamson,
Mm.
uh, and she kind of very brilliantly juxtaposed it with a story about her mom, her relationship with her mom, and how she got her power back through embracing her anger, and now she's channeling that into this letter. Right? It's really brilliant, like what she's done, and I'll send it to you later.
Mm.
And then there was a second article that is more like a roundup of all the resources.
Mm.
And there was a second woman who had already called out Gabby Bernstein, but when she saw Marianne Williamson's thread, she was very surprised and shocked
Mm.
at first. But then again, she was like, "Oh, actually, this is not a surprise. Actually, this is so common, you know."
Mm.
And the reason why she was surprised was because she initially praised Marianne Williamson. She was part of their Sister Giant meetings. She was very actively involved in the community.
Mm.
So she was inspired to make this whole roundup, right? And these articles are now read by thousands of people at this point, both of these articles. So it's kind of going into the viral territory, right? And then today I was also appeared in a newspaper in Portland or somewhere in the Northwest,
Oh,
I
wow.
think in Washington.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's related to a similar but different incident when an Indian yoga teacher of 30 years was rudely kicked out of a yoga conference.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So there have been a lot of layers for
Mm-hmm.
everything, and there's a lot
Yeah.
still going on and happening as well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. This is something I mentioned before, again, before we started recording, but
Mm-hmm.
it's coming back to me once again, how obviously important all of this
Mm-hmm.
is, how valid, important also given so many other movements that are going on in our
Mm-hmm.
world right now, things such as the Me Too movement, Time's Up, young children, teenagers, and so on in the US who
Mm-hmm.
are protesting and coming together to, try to stop gun violence. There's a lot
Exactly.
happening. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot happening in so many different areas. Yeah. And
And even that, a lot of people are saying, Black teenagers have been speaking against gun violence for years. And then
mm,
suddenly when these white kids start speaking up about it, everybody's like supporting them and even
mm,
donating $500,000, like, you know, and it's like, where did that support? Where was that support when the Black teenagers were speaking up? So
mm,
there's a layer even with that.
mm, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't even thought of that or connected it,
Hmm.
but you mentioned it just now. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I'm really curious about as well, because all of this is obviously it's so important what's going on now.
Hmm.
What was it like for you growing up? Also, I mean, for those who don't, not everyone may know this, I do, but although you live in the U.S. now, you actually were, I think, born and raised in Burma. Is that correct?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
to Indian parents.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, if I don't know if you want to share with the audience a little bit about what that was like. If that,
Yeah. So as I was sharing with you before this recording, before we were recording, that Burma is racist too, right?
mm,
And especially the Burmese dictatorship.
mm,
And so before I was born, and I think even before my brothers were born, like my oldest brother was born in 1974. I was born in 1981. And in 1962, there was a military coup, and then Burma became a military dictatorship. So, and then this dictator decided that he wanted to be racist against Indians for some reason. I'm not sure why.
mm,
And he instituted this policy that foreigners um, cannot get certain opportunities. And
mm,
by foreigners, he was specifically targeting Indians because a lot of the foreigners in Burma were Indians at the time.
mm,
So,
mm,
and even if they were born in Burma, they were regarded as foreigners. And so my mom, for example, wanted to become a doctor, but she never got her medical degree because of the rule that foreigners cannot get a medical degree.
mm,
And so now by the time I was born in 1981, there was less of there was still a military dictatorship,
mm,
you know, but it was kind of moving towards some sort of changes, right?
mm,
But even though there was less of the institutional racism, it was already part of the cultural fabric. So there was a lot of the low level, what might be called microaggressions, similar to the kind of racism there is in America now, which is a lot of it is low level microaggressions
mm,
and boundary violations. There's a great diagram called the pyramid of white supremacy, right?
mm,
Where it starts with indifference and minimizations and dismissal, then discrimination, and then calls for violence and then genocide, right? So when people think of white supremacy, they think of just uh, KKs and Nazis with tiki torches and pitchforks, but that's not it. It's the whole system. So Burma was similar. It became part of the whole system. It was systemic. It was in the cultural fabric. And then another phenomenon of that's very important was a lot of Indians started adopting dual names, Burmese names in addition to the Indian names, and they started using more of their Burmese names in official documents because whenever government officials saw an Indian name, they would be very racist towards that person without even seeing the person. But when they had a Burmese name, they would think, it's a Burmese. So they would get more opportunities. However, and my parents themselves had dual names too, right?
mm,
However, all of my brothers, like I have three older brothers, no sisters. All of my brothers have, including me, have only Indian names, no Burmese names,
mm,
which seems strange at first, but my parents were pretty clear by the time even my oldest brother was born that they didn't care to play with the system anymore. So they were just going to give their kids Indian names, but educate them and raise them to be qualified to study abroad by the time comes.
mm,
So it was like I was trained to see things, to see the blind spots that most people don't see. So now I'm in this perfect position because so many white people and so many what I call white passing people, because this is the racism here is not really based on race, it's based on skin color. So you can be a person of color but still have what's called white passing privilege. Or even light skin privilege, which is a whole other topic. So this is where the term intersectionality comes in as well, where oppression has different levels of oppression and privilege. So, and so it was like I was born for these times in a sense.
Yeah.
And I was trained for these times.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. From the time you were quite young, you could say,
Yeah.
from the time you were born, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coming into your family. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there other ways in which your parents were revolutionary as well? I mean, you've mentioned the name, the significance of your names. Were there other ways they were revolutionary? And also, I suppose, a sort of a tag-on question is, were there other experiences that you can remember growing up that helped contribute to your ability to see those blind spots, to realize things that maybe not everyone did?
Yeah. I mean, like I was bullied, in school. Like I had my pants pulled down and all that. And I didn't even make the connection with racism until like in the last few weeks that might have been part of it too. And as far as my parents, like they might have been revolutionaries in other ways too. Like I'm just not sure. Like for example, they were very insistent too that all of us learn many different musical instruments like the tabla and the harmonium and the mandolin, and all of my brothers know how to play them very well. I just didn't have quite the patience to do that. But like we were immersed in music. That was another very significant part of growing up. And I think even though I didn't carry that with me to actually knowing how to play, like I knew how to play at least the harmonium for a bit, but I forgotten how to play. But I think part of learning music at a young age helped me also, because so much of music is seen through the patterns. So it trained me in pattern recognition, even with that.
Yeah. That's a brilliant connection, actually. Yeah. I grew up playing music as well, and I didn't think about it that way until you just mentioned that just now. Once again, yeah. So I suppose there are many. There can be things that feel subtle, as you put it, but that actually can be a benefit in helping each of us to learn to recognize blind spots if we allow ourselves to see it that way.
Yeah. And also my uncle from my mom's side, so in 1988, there was a democracy uprising. And then in 1991, the military dictatorship, around 1990, I think, they created free and fair elections for the first time. And it was free and fair. They didn't even cheat because honestly, they never expected that they would lose. For some reason, they had this hubris, this arrogance that they would win, but they lost by a landslide. The opposition party won by 80%. And then that's when they decided to cheat. They said, oh, okay, you win, but we have to write a constitution before we can give power. And they dragged it for 20 years. They dragged. Yeah. So my uncle was one of the people running for the opposition party, and he won one of the districts. Like he won one of the cities or districts, or I think it was in one of the states actually. In Burma, there's states and divisions. So, and he was also imprisoned several times as well.
Oh, wow.
After that, yeah. And then they put the leader of the opposition party under house arrest. for 20 years as well. Yeah.
So, yeah, as you said, when you think back on it now, you're realizing that actually political activism, and I suppose one, I don't know, would the term revolutionary be overstating it? Being revolutionary is something that has been a part of your sort of your family code and your DNA that you grew up with in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and also like my dad's 100% Indian, and
Mm.
my mom on the other hand, like my mom's dad was Indian, my mom's granddad was Indian, my mom's mom is also Indian, but I think her mom or her grandma, I think, was a Burmese princess.
Mm.
So
Wow.
and but it was related to, but a bunch of her cousins experienced a mass assassination.
Oh my God.
So that's part of my DNA too.
Wow.
So
How did that touch your life? Were you aware of things like that growing up as they were happening, or was it something your parents didn't really share with you?
well, no, it's way back in history. Like
Okay.
their yeah, the mass assassination happened, I think maybe 100 or 200 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
never mind. Okay.
yeah. But like I'm
Um,
descendants of that Burmese princess whose cousins experienced that.
mm,
Like she was the daughter of a chieftain and who was related to the royal dynasty. And there was a whole lot of political intrigue with that too.
mm,
So there was that. And on my dad's side, I'm descendants of like a lot of the Sikh warrior gurus who fought against the Islamic Mughal empire that was
mm.
also being very oppressive against the Indians.
Wow. Wow. So this really is literally a part of your DNA.
Yeah.
It's not overstating it. How
Hmm.
does that fit into? I have a few questions that are coming to me, but first I'll start with this one. How does all of that fit into you and your life now as Kundan in terms of how you see the world? I mean, obviously, you mentioned before that your ability to see blind spots and to see things that may not occur to others have been helping you to also see this current situation differently and to be able to speak out and point those things out to people. Are there
Hmm.
other ways that
Yeah,
revolutionary spirit has helped you in your life?
right. So the Sikh warriors are what I call warrior sage archetype, right? They were warriors and sages, and the sage aspect is where we get into, and also the rebel archetype, right? But the sage aspect is where we get into seeing the blind spots and the patterns and all of that, right? But I think that the royal aspect of me is important too because especially nowadays, there's a part of me where
Mm.
I don't suffer fools, in a sense,
Mm.
where there's a very low tolerance for BS, like literally heads will roll. So that's the royal part of it too,
Mm.
where I have like stronger and stronger boundaries. Like the number of people I've blocked on Facebook, for example, have increased, as well as how quickly I block people nowadays. Like in the past, I would engage in these long discussions, and now I'd be like, it would be more like halfway there. I'd be like, nope, time to block you now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say, I mean, as you said, your ability to spot
Mm-hmm.
what could be termed BS, or
Mm-hmm.
to spot people who maybe just aren't resonating with you in the same.
Mm-hmm.
So your ability to place your boundaries where they've needed has
Mm-hmm.
gotten faster and quicker. Would you say also that, I'm going to back up a little bit, that your ability to shape your life, so, your life in terms of the type of life that you would like to be leading, has your ability to place your boundaries and so on helped you to be able to do that as well? One example I'm immediately thinking of, for those, not everyone may be aware of this, I am because I know your work, obviously, um, But one of the things I know has come up every so often when, you know, you've written and spoke is the idea of this sacred anger as
Mm-hmm.
well, and how emotions can be really powerful tools when we see and use them that way. For me, I immediately see the connections between sacred or righteous anger, is another way to put it, with
Mm-hmm.
things like having a revolutionary spirit. You know, in the charity world and the campaigning world, those go very hand in hand often.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other ways that, so things such as sacred or righteous anger plus having a revolutionary spirit has helped you?
Yeah, it's, I've documented at least four different types of anger, right? There is the
Mm,
adult temper tantrum, there is the sacred rage that you mentioned, there's anger from boundary violations, and then there is
mm,
anger from the feedback loop between social oppression and internal repression.
mm,
And what I found is that the only type of anger that might be considered quote unquote unhealthy would be
mm,
the adult temper tantrum, right? Because it comes from our subconscious limiting beliefs and childhood wounding. But even that is useful because it's telling us what we're believing, right?
mm,
And it's valuable information, like a valuable guidance system. And so that is meant to be dissolved into clarity, right?
mm,
Whereas the other types of anger are not meant to be dissolved; they're meant to be transformed and channeled into sacred passion, and in the case of sacred rage, into sacred passion
mm,
and purpose. In the case of the boundary violation, this transform into like protection and clarity and boundaries, right? And
mm,
strength. And then in the case of the one with the feedback loop, it's pure power. Like when you really get in touch with that, it's pure raw power and fuel. So yeah, I'm getting more and more in touch with all of these types of anger, especially the fourth type, which is a very rare thing.
mm,
And in my research interviews, almost every single person who fully got in touch with it
mm.
became millionaires within a few years. They end up doing amazing things like finding a cure for a type of cancer. Like it's just incredible. So, and as I myself get more and more in touch with it too, I'm noticing the same things. Like like I'm getting all of these opportunities, like you mentioned, you know, and like I got published in Marketing for Hippies recently, which has a mailing list of I think 20,000 people.
Mm,
So, all of these things are happening, and plus not just anger, but really seeing the value of each of the emotions and the purpose, right?
mm,
Like for example, uh, fear has a bad rap too, but fear can inspire us to finally stop running away from ourselves and be still. And then sadness is really the emotion of letting go. So when it's time to let go of something or even let go of an emotion, that's when the sadness comes in. So after the anger, if we truly feel it and hear its message, the next emotion that comes in is sadness, so that the anger can be released. Same thing with any other emotion, fear, guilt, shame. You have to allow the sadness to come in next so that it can be released. And even just knowing that has been helpful. And like, a lot of people don't understand this, so they try to like, especially when the sadness comes in, they try to like stop it or shut it down, right?
mm,
Because in terms of energy, the sadness is a lower emotion than both anger and fear. It feels less good, and so people think, oh, now I'm worse off, but you're not worse off. It's actually progress, you know.
yeah.
Like I had a powerful experience when I was doing contact improv, for example, about a year or two ago, where I suddenly felt this incredible fear. So I tapped into the fear. I was like, what am I fearing? It was like, well, I fear hurting others. And I fully felt this, and I was like, oh, I think I need to take a break. So I went to the bathroom
Mm,
so that I could really process and fully feel it. And I just very quickly found myself rolling into a ball and literally bawling, just crying and bawling. But then after that, both the fear and sadness was gone. I was like, oh, I feel so much better.
It's amazing how fast, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Once you allow yourself to feel some of these emotions that might seem
Mm-hmm.
scary,
Yeah.
how fast they can literally pass through your body.
Mm-hmm.
Just allowing
Yeah.
yourself to feel it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What led you to be interested in even researching and studying things such as the 4 different types of anger? What brought you to that point?
Yeah. I think, as I mentioned before, I was bullied a lot in school.
Mm,
Uh, and even at home because my parents started adopting cousins and stuff, and they were kind of bullying towards me too.
mm,
So I eventually became like kind of like suicidal and stuff like that.
mm,
And so I went into depression and suicidal ideation
mm,
off and on for at least 10 years of my life, from my teenage years till like 25.
mm,
And so I think that's what got me interested in emotions, because at first I was doing uh, the new age thing because that was all I knew, which was to do affirmations, visualization, listen to positive music and inspirational songs.
mm,
But all of that felt like just shoving it down because it was still there.
mm,
And then I had an awakening in 2008 when I realized my true self is love itself.
mm.
So the suicidal thoughts were gone, but when I came back, it was kind of replaced with a different kind of sadness. It was like a longing for home, a longing uh, for that experience, right? And so, so I knew I was love itself. So the question of whether I was lovable or not became a moot point. It was like I was neither lovable nor not lovable. I am love itself,
Mm,
right? But now it was like, yeah, but I still am living in a human world, and that was so expansive and so amazing. You know, how did I feel like I just got, just dropped down from heaven in a sense? So I went on this quest for many years to answer that question, like, what is that? And how do I integrate that into my daily life? So that led me on a journey of discovery where I discovered many things like the 4 types of anger, the 6 levels of knowing yourself,
mm,
uh, the positive uses of negative emotions, the 3 stages of spiritual evolution.
mm,
And part of it was not just for myself, but it was also in response to like a lot of the bullshit that I was seeing that was literally having what I call gaslighting effects, right?
mm.
Gaslighting, by the way, comes from the 1944 movie Gaslight.
Yeah.
Uh, if people are not familiar with it, I highly recommend watching the movie. So you truly get what's happening in the spiritual industry right now. There's a whole lot of gaslighting
Yeah.
using spiritual principles.
And for those who don't know what gaslighting is, would you like to share with them a little bit more about what that actually means?
It's literally changing someone's reality by denying it and using a logical fallacy that sounds true and convincing, but it's actually false. You know, like false equivalence, false dichotomy, like even the question like, you know, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? I used to believe that for years, and now I'm like, how about neither? How about neither?
What would you choose instead?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then if, in the movie, for those who don't know, really
Mm-hmm.
quick, a real quick summary of the movie is that this woman is in love with this man who he turns out to be, a real bad cookie. He's, I think, trying to steal money from her, or he's a murderer, something like that. And film noir. But basically, he convinces her that all of her suspicions about him are her just being crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, yeah, the terms first
Mm-hmm.
started. So as you said,
Right.
when you think
Mm-hmm.
about it in, the spiritual circles, It's a way to, would this be another way to say it also, that it's a way to, if you use gaslighting against or towards someone else, in essence, what you're doing, whether consciously or not, is invalidating their experience,
Exactly.
their own emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be more specific, there's a scene in that movie where he was trying to dim the gaslight on and off. And when she questioned it, he was like, and also he made sure that no one else was around. He isolated her so that she couldn't verify her experience, right? And so he would like turn the gaslight on and off. And when she would question it, hey, why did you turn the gaslight off? And he'd be like, I didn't do that. You're the one that's crazy that thinks. So, so implying that she's the one that having the illusion that the gaslight is on and off. So that's where the term literally comes from that action of him doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, and that's such an important point for people to know and to realize can be happening.
Yeah.
When they come across situations or I don't know, articles or current events that can seem controversial. Well, sometimes that's one of the deeper layers that could be happening in an issue. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's another example of you being able to see blind spots where they may not always be apparent to people. Things such as gaslights can be obvious for you when it's happening.
Yeah. And it's important to document these types of manipulation because there's power in naming something. Like, like that post in the Facebook group yesterday, like at first I didn't know how to name it. Like just something felt off in my body, but I didn't know what it was because I didn't have a name for it. So at first I didn't really say anything. And then this other woman commented something. And without actually using a name, she kind of described it. Even describing it helped me out. I was like, oh my God, that is what's happening, right? But if I could name it, that'd be even more powerful. Then I can know why my body felt uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. Is naming it, and or another way to put that is using your voice and
exactly
out about things. Is that something that has always felt important to you to be able to do when you think back?
Yeah. I don't know if it's always been important, but I think I've always had a deep curiosity about the way the way things work, how it's set up. Like, so that's been important, and I think that's part of my genius too. Like a lot of people have said they admire my very like organizational mind or my organized mind, And so coming up with these mental models like the 4 Taps Banger is, I think, part of my genius that I'm able to literally document things, name them, and organize them in easily organized fashion.
Absolutely. And are there other situations where that has been important for you to be able to use your voice? I mean, I can think of the obvious reason, for me anyway, what first comes to me of the importance of using your voice is to be able to assert yourself, to help defend those who may not feel able to speak out in their own lives. Are there situations where you've experienced that it's been personally helpful or empowering when you have, either name things that are going on or use your voice?
Right, like for example, the terms fragility and white fragility have been more and more like well known recently in these conversations, and it's really just a racial context version of the words cognitive dissonance or the backfire effect, when you see something that opposes your beliefs and or opposes the things you value already, and it creates a cognitive dissonance, and it's very uncomfortable. So there's a defensiveness. And in terms of race, it's called fragility or white fragility because it's within a racial context where they go into what's known as a fragile defensiveness, where, they might either cry that they're the victims, or accuse the other person of being angry, and so they would go into this like they could break easily, right? When in reality they're the ones that are oppressing the other. So it's like a role. In fact, somebody posted this analogy with even the story of Goldilocks and the three bears, right? And somebody said that is the first story of white privilege and white fragility, because
Oh, wow.
here's this little girl that steals, and breaks all of this, goes into a stranger's house, eats all the food without permission, breaks all their stuff, and then when the bears come in, she's like, "Oh, now I'm all scared." I'm like, oof. And it's like, what the hell? You're the one that's doing all of this harm.
Yeah. It is a little bit counterintuitive when you look at it. Well, if you didn't go in the house, maybe. That could have been helpful. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What another thing? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So, and that's why I posted recently the Old Meat article with beautiful comic strip. It's an amazing article. I'll send it to you later, where it really literally demonstrates what cognitive dissonance feels like in the body by taking you through step by step through it, so that you know what it feels like. And so for me, fragility is not this just white fragility. There's also straight fragility and male fragility. So anytime there is a relationship between the oppressed and the oppressor, and there's a complicity among people who are the oppressor, there is a level of fragility that happens. So for example, I was reading, like even for me, like I experienced my version of fragility myself recently, where I was reading that Southern Indians and Ethiopians might share DNA, and that the untouchable caste in India called the Dalits, who are totally dark-skinned, they're black-skinned in fact, that they're in the lowest caste system, which exists to this day in India, and the descendants of the people who used to be known as the East Ethiopians, and that the northerners, the white-skinned northerners, some of them were Aryan, some of them might have been other races. They literally enslaved them, put them in this racist caste system that exists to this day. And I'm a Punjabi, so I was born and raised in Burma, right? So I had nothing to do with that, right? So I didn't even know. I knew the caste system was classist, but I didn't know it was racist. But for me, even the possibility that I might be the descendant of an oppressor internally sent me into this fragility, this defensiveness, this grief and shame. And I'd be like, no. And there was this whole like, why me? Like, why do I have to be this descendant, right?
Yeah. How do you work through something like that? So if you have an experience, whether it's something such as what you're describing or any other, how do you come out the other side of that? Because it could be really easy to stay and to feel stuck in that.
Yeah.
And to continue going in the fragility and or victim mode is another way to put it.
I think it's important to understand the word complicity, and then the grief and shame that come from it. So complicity, an example of complicity, for example, is, so you and I are both coaches and healers, right? And so an important reason why we even have a business is because of the trauma from systemic oppression, which means we're actually profiting off this oppression. So we're complicit in it. So the first time you really fully feel that complicity, there's a whole lot of grief and shame even from that. And so it really takes courage and the willingness to feel that grief and shame, so that it passes through the body and can be replaced by what I call sacred rage, and then feel that fully too, so that the sadness can come in and then it's transformed into sacred power and passion.
Is that what helped you?
Yeah.
Mm, mm, I love that. And by the way, obviously, for anyone watching and listening, that it doesn't mean that anyone like Kundan or I are trying to profit.
Right.
That's not what it means. It just means
Yeah.
by virtue of the fact that we have both
Exactly.
do our work.
Yeah.
It's part of this cycle that can sometimes happen.
Right. It's like we're not deliberately doing it, we're complicit in it. So that's what the word complicity means. Yeah.
So how do you square that away for you? How do you square away something such as the idea or knowing that you're complicit in anything? You know, when we're talking about things such as being more conscious, being aware when anything like gaslighting or spiritual bypassing is happening, how do you square away with yourself what you, whether we're talking about your profession or any other behavior, how do you square that away when you realize that you may be a part of something that doesn't always feel great on the face of it?
Yeah. I think the first step is recognition. And for me, lately, that's why I'm moving away from an individualistic perspective into more of a communal perspective, even when I am doing one-on-one sessions. And I'm trying to get people to fully discover their role in changing the system and changing their communities and empowering them not just to have success in their own life, not just to become a millionaire or have a great girlfriend or boyfriend, but really, what is their role in creating a better community, a better city, a better neighborhood? And I give people examples, like, for example, that, changing the system does change the individual too. We already have great examples like the Stanford prison experiment on the negative side, but on the positive side, in my own city, I live in Tustin in America, and a few years ago, the city of Tustin replaced the dirty squash court with a free outdoor gym in the park. And I think what happened was the city got tired of arresting people all the time. So,
arresting them for being outside.
The dirty squash court attracted a whole lot of like gangster type people.
Okay.
And because it was dirty, unused, and yeah, it had a very bad vibe, that whole environment. And so they destroyed the entire squash court, replaced it with this free outdoor gym in the park. So what started happening was people who couldn't afford to go to the gym, they would use, or even normal people who are like, it's still within walking distance, it's free, let's go there. So it attracted better people. And then when other people see these people exercising, they were like, oh, I want to do what they're doing, because people like to mirror other people, right? I want to do exercise too. So it started attracting more of these exercise groups. And even the regular folks who were watching that, it changed their behavior to be more in their body, to exercise more, to talk to each other more, to be in community more. And so that's a great example of how changing the system changes the individual. So in my work, I'm moving more into that area where I'm really getting people to ask these questions like privilege and systems, and like, what is your role in trying to change the system itself rather than your own life, while being, fully nourished and self-sufficient yourself? That is the big question that I'm now like getting clients to ask themselves.
I love that. I love that. Is that something that has always felt personally important for you as well in your own life? To be able to consider, how are you helping? Now, obviously, we are all very important as individuals, but has the idea of also connecting with others in community, has that felt something important for you in your own life?
I think so. Like I like going to meditation classes and stuff. But I think another thing really bears mentioning in the personal development industry, and in this industry we're both part of spiritual and stuff. There's this the predominant view is what's known as the trickle down view, or the ripple effect view. The idea that an individual being empowered empowers the family then empowers the city, the neighborhood, the city. But we're living in times where the trickle down effect is no longer enough, where it's about, yes, the individual is about both and rather than either or. Yes, the individual must be empowered, and we got to change the system. And also, each individual must be thinking all the time, what is my role in changing the system and working towards creating better cities. Like, I think that, like, a friend of mine mentioned this, was a Black woman, and it was eye-opening even for me when I read that. She made a comment in response to my post about the city of Tustin. She said, yeah, for example, what if we had a better public transportation system? In a sense, that can be even more healing than any healing modality, because there is, more community, people will talk to each other more, there is less pollution, less of the stress of driving, all of these things, right? So I think it's time to raise our standards, like raise the bar.
I love that. I love that. Raising the bar for our communities, our world, as well as ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much. Before we wind this up, it's been so amazing speaking with you, and I do feel like we could go on and on and on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For all of those who are watching and listening, I'm sure there is so much of what you have shared that has been incredible food for thought, has helped to be an inspiration for them and their own journeys as well. Is there maybe a final thought or a final message that you'd like to close this out with for them? Something that feels important that you have personally learned through your life experience so far and your journey thus far. Or maybe
right. If I were to summarize everything that I do, and my why, my what, and the how, it is, the new thing that I posted on my Facebook cover photo, that love is kind, playful, and fierce, that anger is sacred, that love can be fierce, and that boundaries are essential. And everything that I do now is supporting that and creating that. I think that's the most important thing.
I love that. How beautiful. That's amazing.
Yeah, because people, there's the nice guy or the nice girl syndrome, right? Where people don't know the difference between being kind and being nice. Being nice is just normalized politeness. Or they believe that love is kind, but they don't realize that love is also fierce. Which is why I love the Alexis Morgan article where she said, love isn't just doves cooing in the morning. Love is also lions, willing to kill to protect their cubs,
Absolutely. Yeah. The idea of that fierce paternal or maternal love.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh, well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. And, again, I'm sure there's a lot that those watching and listening will be able to take away from this. There have been so many incredible insights. If people would like to know even more about what you do and perhaps connect with you as well, how can they best do that?
Yeah, before I do that, one more thing is, 8 weeks ago, I started a Facebook Live series every Friday. So I think this is a good segue to talk about that too, called Pioneering Perspectives Friday Features. And it's really in response to the fact that, partly in response to the fact that a lot of these summits are just white people, right? So this one's the opposite. It's exclusively Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color. So I'm trying to balance the scales here, but also I'm noticing a dangerous trend where when it's all just white people talking about this, teaching this, there's what I call a monopoly of perspective, where it's just the same perspective with different variations.
Mm.
And as you know, monopolies are dangerous, which is why we have antitrust laws, even in business, right? So a monopoly of perspective is also dangerous by its very nature, but when it's skewed towards upholding the status quo with notions like do nothing and go with the flow, it's even more like dangerous and destructive. So what I've been trying to do with this show is help people expand their perspectives. And so not only am I bringing in people of color and Blacks and Indigenous voices that are not normally heard, and eventually I'm even planning on bringing in LGBTQIA as well. And so that these voices that are not heard will be heard as well. So what happens then is that there is more perspective for people to choose from. And so I'm even telling all of my guests that my requirement is not just that they're by POC, Blacks, Indigenous, people of color, but that the topics must be pioneering, innovative, cutting edge, non-mainstream. Because we already have too much of the mainstream. We want what's not being heard.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so if people would like to check out your series, I'll make sure that on the website we have links to Kundan's website. Is there, how can they find the series in particular as well? Is there
so my website, kundanchhabra.com, there is a blog post with the series title, Pioneering Perspectives, and you click on that. And I can give you a direct link to the series too, but it's within my website, kundanchabra.com.
Great. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I feel like, again, I could easily keep talking for hours about all of this, and this has been such an honor. Thank you so much, Kundan. So grateful, as ever. Thank you, everyone, again, for being with us, and we hope that this has been an inspiration for you as well. Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's my work, and there's details like knowing your heart virtue, your superpower, all of that. But that's really the how, and the how and the what. But really, it's all about creating a world where love is kind, playful, and fierce.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome.
All the best, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye for now.
I'll live for the good days. I'll dream of the great nights. I'll live for the ones I lost. Slide us up, we gonna meet in the afterlife. It's all sacrifice. I got the appetite to be a better man. Let's unite. My story like a motion picture. Bittersweet like shots of liquor. Let me take the pain. My skin is thicker. We one blood. I'm not pulling triggers. It's all love. And yo, here's the kicker.